Hey gang, how's it going? It's been a while. I think my last video was last year around Christmas where I reviewed the Timex Q, the reissue. I hope you guys enjoyed that video. And prior to that, I did a video on the Arnie reissue, Ani-Digi Diver. And then my very first video I did was on my Tudor Black Bay GMT Pepsi. I put it on a leather strap. Today I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to talk about watch collecting. I've been collecting watches for about 20 years, and I'm hoping to share some knowledge and some tips to help people who are just starting out. I'm going to give you a few key points that you need to know about watch collecting. Number one, I believe, is the most important, and it's knowledge. You got to know about the hobby and know about the watches, because my goal was to eventually, when I first started out, I wanted to get a Rolex Submariner, which was my all-time favorite watch, kind of my grail watch, which I finally got. It's right here. I put it on a rubber strap. But when I started out in high school, it was a Casio G-Shock, the original 1983 DW. I think it's 5000. I don't have that anymore, but I've got a couple that are similar to those. These two right here. They're just your classic looking G-Shocks. Unfortunately, I lost the original G-Shock, which I'm still bummed out about. But so I started out with a very modest, very not so special watches, and I just kind of slowly built a better and better collection. I reached a point where I had like over 70 watches. So here are some pictures of some of my old watches here. I had enough watches that where I could wear a different watch every day for 2 months straight. And so right now my collection is less than half of that, probably only like 20 or so, because I started realizing I had so many watches that a lot of them were just sitting in the watch box and not getting any wrist time. And number two, a lot of them were mechanical, so the maintenance costs were starting to build up. So I decided to get rid of some of them, and kind of do quality over quantity. And so that's why you have to have a knowledge of watches. You need to know which ones will go up in value, and then you purchase those, and then you can sell them, make some money, and move up a level. It's kind of like buying a house. You start out with a starter home and hope it appreciates, and then you sell it, and then you use the profits to buy a bigger home, and then do it again and buy even a bigger house. So buying a watch is the same concept. You buy lower end watches that will go up in value, and that usually means vintage, unfortunately, and then you sell them, and then you can move on to the mid-luxury level. Maybe like this Fortis here that I got, the B42 Cosmonauts chronograph. And then maybe the next step you could go up is sell that and buy a Sin 903, and then sell that and buy a Tudor GMT. Then you sell that, and then you finally get your Grail watch, the Rolex. And then there are different type of collectors, so you might not want to do that. But no matter what, you got to know the stuff. You got to know what you're doing. Now the next step, I think, is setting goals and deciding what you want to concentrate on. And or you could be a person who says, you know what, I'm just going to buy watches that turn me on. Like in the old days, I did that. I bought this Stars and Stripes, the Citizen, because I thought it was just a cool looking watch. I bought this Rado because I remember my grandfather had one in the 60s, and I wanted to have something like his. You know, I used to have the Omega Speedmaster simply because it went on the moon. But anyway, decide what you want to do. Do you want to do mechanical only? Do you want to do quartz? You can do both if you want. Do you want to do divers? Like, you want a vintage diver like the Seiko? Do you want to do, a Doxa, a Swiss diver? Do you want to go chronographs or racing watches? I've showed you this before, the Fortis Space Watch. Maybe a Quartz Citizen chronograph. Maybe a Speedmaster. You got the Sin here. So those are the mechanical chronographs. Or maybe you want to go with like a military field watch. Or an everyday watch, like a Datejust or a Rolex Explorer. This is an old Rolex Date. You can consider this an everyday watch. This was my grandfather's watch. Do you want to go vintage? Like a vintage Seiko? This is my dad's 1965 Seiko. You want to go with something that's modern, something big, something small. But I recommend having a goal or some kind of concentration. That way you know where you want to go. You're just not buying like random watches. And next is, unfortunately, it also exists, is financing. You got to figure out how to get the cash to buy these watches. I'm not gonna be able to really help you with that. I'm just you're gonna have to have a good job and save money. Because watch collecting is not cheap. It's not as expensive as collecting vintage cars, but still, I mean, just any old regular watch these days, you're looking at $200, $300 at least. And then, as you know, Rolexes these days, you're looking at an arm and a leg. So you got to save up the money, and I don't think I can help you on that. That's something you got to do on your own. The last thing I want to talk about is procuring the watches. What sources? Where are you going to go to get these watches? And I think, especially for beginners, the first place people go is a brick and mortar store, which is okay. But you're going to be, those brick and mortar stores are usually brand new watches, so you're going to be paying retail, which is not the end of the world, but you're gonna it's gonna cost you a little bit more. I usually like to buy used because I want somebody else to take the retail hit. But I'd have bought watches brand new, like the Fortis, the Sin. My Submariner was used, and obviously some of the vintage Seikos. I had to buy those used. So. So an actual store is one option, and usually they're authorized dealers. So they are trustworthy, but it will cost you. The next possible place to get watches is actually knowing collectors, which is a bit tough because collectors are spread out around the world. So you're only in contact with collectors through forums and things like that. So if you do deal with collectors, make sure they're honest and reputable. But you're gonna have to, send money to them, and they're gonna have to send the watch to you. So you're gonna have to hope they sent you something good. For example, my Poggi, my 6139 Poggi, I got from a collector, and he's a well-known collector, so I wasn't worried, and everything turned out okay. And the last place to get watches, which is very popular now, is online. So online you can go many ways. You can go through eBay, which a lot of my old vintage Seikos were from eBay. For that, you just got to do your homework, and so make sure you don't get cheated. Buy from reputable sellers, and check everything out before you pull the trigger. Another way is online, going to the actual brands like Omega, and get watches that way. Of course, that's going to cost you. It's going to be really expensive. Another way is gray market. I haven't bought anything gray market, but I've heard good things about it, and there are a lot of reputable gray market dealers. Also, then another way is just buying from authorized dealers online. Again, do your homework, make sure everything's legit. And another way is through forums and watch groups. But make sure you know what the rules are when you're selling and buying, and what their regulations are, or how they do things before you do that. And check out the buyer and talk to other people on the forum saying, hey, is this guy honest? And one other way I get watches, which sounds strange but has helped me quite a bit, is just people giving me watches. Because I'm pretty well known as the watch guy at work and among my friends. So a lot of times people will somehow end up with a watch, or they might have a watch, or their dad leaves them a watch and they don't really care about it, so they'll come up to me and go, hey man, I got a watch, do you want it? And they just give me watches. I've gotten at least 10, 15 watches that way. So get the word out. Make sure everybody know that you're the watch guy, and you'll be surprised. Maybe you're gonna get some neat little gems. Well, that's about it, guys. So just to recap, I think the most important things a watch collector should know, especially when you're starting out, is number one, knowledge. Know about the hobby, know about the watches, know which ones to collect, know which ones will go up in value, which ones are easily that you can easily sell. Number two is I recommend having a goal or a specialization or a concentration. Decide what kind of watch you want. Do you want mechanical, automatic, quartz? Do you want sports watches like divers, chronographs, field watches? Do you want everyday watches? Do you want vintage watches? You want Japanese vintage? You want Swiss vintage? But I think if you decide on, concentrate on a certain genre of watches, that'll help you focus, and that'll help you just know where to go, what to do, instead of just kind of randomly flying around different places and buying watches. I mean, if you like vintage Seikos, for example, you're gonna have to focus on probably eBay or talking to collectors. If you like fashion watches, then your main focus will be like Macy's or Nordstrom, or some kind of brick and mortar store. If you want high-end Swiss, then you better work hard and make the money. So that's why I recommend having a goal and deciding what type of watch you want. The fourth thing to consider is finance. You got to make sure you got the money, and don't overextend yourself. Make sure your family doesn't go hungry. Don't make sure you don't have high credit card debt where you're building up all this interest. Save the money. Have a watch fund, and then when you've got the watch fund all stocked up, that's when you go out and you buy the watch. and it makes you feel good. You realize, you know, you worked hard to save and to get this watch, so you'll treasure and value it more. But definitely make a plan and save. Finally, it's procurement. Where are you going to get the watch? You're going to go to a brick and mortar store, authorized dealer online, or a gray market online. You're going to go directly to the brand. You're going to buy it from other collectors on watch forums. It's going to depend on what you want. Like I said in my last example, if you want fashion watches, you go to these retail stores. You know, if you want vintage watches, you're going to have to go eBay. If you want high-end watches, you're going to have to go either through reputable, authorized online dealers, or you're going to have to go straight to the brand. But it all depends on what kind of watch you want. But always do your homework and make sure these people are honest and reputable. So the best way is to just go online and do your homework, you know, before you buy your watch. You know, these things are expensive. You don't want to get cheated or buy something that's you know, that's not what you really wanted. Do your homework, save your money, and go to the right place. So that's about it, guys. I hope that helped. Please put any comments or suggestions below, and I'll see you next time. Alright, stay safe and take care. Bye.